Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar with co-founder and CEO Cary Breese of NowRx. I'm really excited to have him on today. He's an absolutely outstanding founder. He's up to some really interesting things. This is a company that we have reiterated our top deal rating on for a second time now. It's one of the only companies that we've rated twice and has continued to perform exceedingly well and do some within their space. And so today, basically, we have an opportunity to sit down with Cary and hear from him directly, the founder, learn more about NowRx, hear from him, ask him questions, and then give you, the listeners, an opportunity to also ask him questions before deciding whether or not to invest. So with that, I would love to kick it off. And Cary, would you tell us a little bit about your story, who you are, and what you're up to at NowRx?
Great, Chris, thank you so much for hosting us on this webinar. Really a pleasure to be here. I love to have a real interactive discussion, so hopefully we'll generate some good questions. I've been a technology startup entrepreneur for the last 15, 20 years. I've engineering degree, also kind of a financial and data science background as well. Worked for some insurance companies in actuarial science, and so kind of an interesting hybrid background. My most, I guess, most successful claim to fame was a startup company I bootstrapped on the insurance side, where we automated insurance processing and underwriting, a company called Trafalgar. Bootstrapped, but sold it after 7 years for an 18x return on invested capital, which was good for me and my partners. And I've been bouncing around various different technologies, from a database software company to this pharmacy industry. My co-founder and I had worked on other projects, and we wanted to do something in healthcare. It's just known to have bottlenecks and opportunities for disruption. It's time to bring the latest state-of-the-art technology into various parts of healthcare. We started looking at pharmacy and just immediately got fascinated by just the layers and layers of complexity and regulatory barriers and opportunity for a new startup mindset to create a new model based around technology and logistics to really turn upside down a $400 billion industry. And here we are almost 5 years later now.
That's awesome. So for those that don't know, and this is their first time hearing about NowRx, if you had to define it kind of in one sentence, how do you define NowRx as a business?
So we're a technology and logistics enabled pharmacy. We are a full stack, vertically integrated pharmacy solution. And the end goal is to create a new model for pharmacy that, rather than going in and standing in line at a store, we fulfill prescriptions from micro fulfillment centers and deliver every prescription right to customers same day, free of charge. So it's a completely new model for pharmacy. You can think of it like an Uber for pharmacy, but I don't think that analogy is quite right, because we actually are the pharmacy. We have our own pharmacists, our own inventory, and we built a lot of automation technology and logistics and software to make that model effective and efficient and profitable. You know, customers love it. It's been taking off since 2016 when we launched. We have more work to do on technology. We have one patent pending. We look at ourselves as a technology company that's gone into the pharmacy space to re-engineer the entire model.
Sure. So when you say, hey, you know, you could get your drugs delivered to your door for free, and that's a profitable business model. Can you talk to us a bit about the business model and how it actually works and where you make money?
Sure. It's a hard business. It's a notoriously thin margin business. And so when we looked at the industry initially, we realized that if you're going to absorb delivery expenses, so the patient doesn't have to, you have to make up for that margin somewhere else. And so we make money off of the sales of the drugs. As a licensed pharmacy, each one of our micro fulfillment centers, and we now have 4 operational, we actually sell drugs. We buy them from the wholesale market. We sell them to the customer. We usually run that revenue through the insurance plans of any particular customer. So we get reimbursements from the health insurance plans directly to our pharmacy. Sometimes there's a copay from the patient as well. So we combine those two. That's our revenue. We take out the cost of goods sold, which is the cost of the medications that we buy in inventory. And that difference is our gross profit. And from that gross profit, we have to be super efficient. So we're very automated. We use robotics to actually fill the bottles. We don't try to use people for counting out pills. We have robots that can sort, count, bottle, fill, label, cap in 20 seconds without human intervention. We have our own pharmacy software platform that streamlines the insurance reimbursements and coordination with the physicians on refills, application of coupons. We have automation as well on the pharmacist verification side. Once the fulfillment process is done, we then give it to one of our drivers. We have our own fleet of delivery personnel and drivers and cars. We control the entire process. Important to do in pharmacy when you're carrying around narcotics and you need to do background checks and patient privacy. And so we make money off that gross profit, and it all comes down to how efficient can we be. We don't waste money on big retail stores because we don't have patients coming in, but we do have facilities. We have micro fulfillment facilities, and the more efficient we get there, the more money and more profitability we have.
So talk to me about that, the micro fulfillment centers. What do they look like? What type of area coverage do they have? And how does that compare to a traditional pharmacy?
Yeah, it's a new model. I mean, I'm really excited about it. You've started to see in the grocery space, there are some startups doing some micro fulfillment strategies. The old retail model is build a big retail 15,000 square foot store on every street corner like CVS or Walgreens, have customers come in, they stand in line, but while they're waiting for their prescription, they're shopping and filling up their carts. And that's really the strategy, if you think about it, for the big chain pharmacies is they have an in-store strategy. They want customers there. They want them upselling them on other products. And then you look at very automated e-commerce businesses. There is mail order pharmacy. It's about a third of the industry where you have super automated, large automated facilities, big houses the size of several football fields, companies like Express Scripts, Caremark, and they mail prescriptions to you in 7 or 10 days. They have all kinds of robotics and conveyor belts and automation technology. They're very good at efficiency, but they're not good on same-day delivery. So we marry those two. So the micro fulfillment strategy is taking all the automation and technology of the mail order pharmacies, but putting it in a micro fulfillment center that's near the customer. These are in the communities. We have one fulfillment center every 10 to 15 miles in a particular geography. They're about 4,000 or 5,000 square feet in size. We use commercial space, and we can cover the territory with that micro fulfillment center, equivalent territory to about 20 big chain pharmacies. I like to use a stat. I have a slide that shows this in a 5-mile radius around our micro fulfillment center in Mountain View, California, which is just south of San Francisco. In that 5-mile radius, there are 10 CVS's and 11 Walgreens. Each one is a 15,000 square foot store, spending about $100,000 a month in rent. We cover that same territory with one micro fulfillment center, 5,000 square feet, commercial space. So we have 1/120th the footprint at half the size and a third the cost per square foot. So we pick up a lot of savings there on the fixed overhead by not having that big retail space. I think it's the right model for pharmacy. You're starting to see it in groceries, and I think you'll see that in other industries as well, because it marries the best of e-commerce and retail. It's really the best of both worlds.
So you've had really great traction today, and I'd love for you to kind of call out some of the numbers in terms of revenue and users and number of subscriptions or prescriptions filled. Could you get into that a little bit and then talk to us about what geographic area you've been working within and plans for expansion from there?
Absolutely. So we're going to do about $7 million in revenue this year, a little bit more than that for 2019. That's up about 70% year over year from 2018. That's all basically in one geography where we launched in Mountain View. We are now expanding to Southern California, where I'm talking to you today. We have launched our first micro fulfillment center in Irvine, which is in the LA, Orange County area. So first territory outside of the Bay Area. We're super excited about that. We're projecting about 15 to 17 million in revenue for 2020. With this round that we're raising, Currently on SeedInvest, we're raising our Series B. We'll talk about that later, but we are going to expand throughout California, San Diego. We'll be looking at probably Seattle and Phoenix as well. And that'll have us really entrenched in the West Coast. We're then going to go out and raise a somewhat larger round called a Series C sometime next year or next 18 months. And it's going to be a fairly large round, $100 million probably, to go nationwide with the NowRx concept. That's our goal, is to build a national brand. We are a delivery business, so we are limited by the geographies where we open up micro-fulfillment centers. They're very low capital to expand. We do 5-year leases, so there's a monthly rent as a pharmacist and technician and drivers and a couple of vehicles, but it's a fairly low capital investment to launch more micro-fulfillment centers. And so that's the way we expand, and we're going to target the top 20 cities and major metropolitan areas throughout the U.S. over the next 3 to 5 years. It's a $400 billion industry, and we think we can get hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, if not $1 billion, within 5 years.
So all very, very exciting. Talk to me, one, about how you've gone to market to date. How are you actually acquiring these users and getting them in the door? Are you doing TV ads, or are you sitting down with doctors and getting them to get their customers on? And second, that obviously works in a tech-driven economy like San Francisco, Mountain View, these areas, but how do you think about geographic expansion? Will adoption be the same as it has been here, or is it going to get harder as you expand to areas that are maybe not as tech forward?
Fair questions all. So we use both of those customer acquisition strategies you mentioned. We focus heavily on what we call our physician referral channel. There are some benefits that the NowRx service provides to physicians. There's convenience to the patient, sure, but some of our automation and the way we've streamlined the insurance claim processing, we can save a lot of steps for doctors, especially in something called a prior authorization process. We can also improve medication adherence statistics, which is a measure of how consistent a patient takes their medications. There's a huge problem in pharmacy. 30% of all prescriptions go unfilled. People don't have time to go to the pharmacy, or it's just too inconvenient, or they don't have transportation, or they just forget. So NowRx, by doing same-day delivery right to your house, we can eliminate a lot of those reasons for why patients don't take their medications. That prevents avoidable hospitalizations. That creates better health outcomes. That actually drives better reimbursements to doctors from Medicare that pays for performance. So we have a long list of benefits that our service provides to physicians. They refer patients to us. I don't pay them anything. In fact, I'm prevented by law from compensating doctors for patient referrals, but they refer to us all the same. 95% of our patients up to this point have come through our physician referral channel. Now, we are expanding the other channel that you mentioned, which is a direct-to-consumer kind of traditional consumer advertising, and it's more related to brand awareness and getting the name out as we build this brand. So when they're going in and talking to their doctors, they've heard about NowRx before. We brand our vehicles. We do some advertisements on radio and TV. We're doing it somewhat sparingly. We're running some experiments. We want to make sure that we're still acquiring customers at a very effective cost of customer acquisition. It is thin margin business. The lifetime value for a typical pharmacy customer is about $300. If you just look at the gross margin over 5 years, that's not a lot of money to work with in terms of going out and acquiring customers. So we don't want to throw $300 or $400 out per customer acquisition through traditional means. So we're being very careful. We're doing some experimental kind of micro targeting and some hyper local PR and other ad campaigns like that. So we're trying to be smart about it. In terms of other geographies, I think it's pretty clear. I may be biased. My wife knows I don't like standing in lines. In fact, I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to prove that. I think a lot of people in all walks of life would prefer not to stand in line at a pharmacy. Now, because we are a delivery business, the delivery efficiency is limited by customer density. Luckily, this is an incredibly dense market in general. Just in a 5-mile radius that I mentioned before, like around our Mountain View facility, we did a lot of research. There's about $200 million of pharmacy business just in a 5-mile radius in the Bay Area. The Los Angeles area and Orange County is similarly dense, a very, very dense market. That being said, there are certainly rural areas in the country where there's not a lot of population, or it's very dispersed, that a free same-day delivery model is probably not the ideal. But if you look at the top 20 major metropolitan areas in the U.S., that's about 70% to 80% of the U.S. population. You think about the NFL cities is kind of a good way to think about it. And there are multi-billions, tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of revenue potential just in those top 20 major metropolitan areas.
Awesome. So a couple competitors out there, probably most notable, I believe, would be Capsule on the East Coast. How do you differentiate from them? Are you worried about competition? And
Yeah, big market, so not too worried about competition. I think there's going to be more than one winner in this space. I imagine, in my view, it's going to end up more like a CVS and a Walgreens and a Rite Aid. There'll be several choices for customers. We believe that technology is going to win the day, and technology gives you not only efficiency, but the best customer experience. We have been leading the charge on the technology front. We've built our own pharmacy management software system from scratch. We've completely re-engineered pharmacy and pharmacy management. We built our own platform. It's called QuickFill. This year, it's been certified on what's called the SureScripts Health Alliance Network, which is the sort of the quasi-regulatory body that manages pharmacy platforms. If you want to be able to get an electronic prescription from a doctor and have it sent to your system, you need to be certified on SureScripts. Capsule does not have their own technology platform. They're using off-the-shelf software from the pharmacy industry, which I can tell you is shit. I mean, the pharmacy industry is not known for good technology, and you can get by, but at the end of the day, it's going to create bottlenecks and inefficiencies that are going to translate into poor customer experiences. We've integrated our own end-to-end, fully robotic dispensing system that goes through our platform, so a patient can click a button on their NowRx app and say, yeah, I want that refill. It'll be routed to the local NowRx fulfillment center. It'll get automatically sent to our robot that will count, sort, bottle, cap, label in 20 seconds without human intervention. And all of that is possible if you build the right technology platform. So we think we're ahead on the technology side. It's impressive how much money Capsule has raised. So we're actually really excited about that. Some big VCs now are coming into the space. We're talking to some VCs right now about the current round. We'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed. No promises, but you know how that goes, Chris.
Yeah.
The space is getting very hot. We welcome the competition. We're focusing on our technology. We believe we're out in front, and we think that we'll win the day over time with better customer experience, more efficient processing, and just better tech.
Awesome. So talk to me, moving away from direct competitors, incumbents, Walgreens, CVS, Walmart. Why are they not playing in this space? Do you worry about them coming into this market? Or does this just become, something they acquire down the road?
Yeah, I have always been convinced when I first started looking at this industry that the big players like Walgreens and CVS, they have a strategy to bring customers in a store. They have aisles and aisles of products beyond the pharmacy. The pharmacy's way in the back. It's about 200 square feet out of a 15,000 square foot store. And it's clearly an upsell strategy. The sales of the over-the-counter products are critical to the profitability of any one of their stores. And I don't believe that if they go to a free same-day model, and I don't think they believe if they go to a free same-day model, will they get the same kind of upsell opportunity, because customers won't be in those stores. They'll have no need. They have 10,000 stores. They have no need for any of that if they go to a free same-day delivery model. They're going to lose out on this upsell opportunity, or it's certainly going to be detrimental to that. And I think that is why this really is a disruptive opportunity. They can't disrupt themselves. They do delivery. They pay for it. They charge the patient for it. It's like $7 or $8 for same day. It's $4 or $5 for next day. They don't want to be there in free same day delivery model. And they don't have the margin. They don't have the efficiencies. They have people counting out pills one by one. You know, you've got the girl on the counter typing away for 8 minutes. They don't have the efficiencies required to be able to absorb the delivery costs. And more importantly, I don't think they want to. At some point, they're going to get pushed hard enough. They're going to have to have an existential decision and decide, are they going to change their model or not? At that point, you know, I think we'll be well enough along to be a good acquisition target. I don't think they'll make a build or buy decision. I think for speed to market, they'll be looking for acquisitions. Of course, Amazon's coming in. You haven't asked me about that yet, but I know it's on everyone's mind. So I'm going to throw that out there as well while we're talking about competition. Amazon's most interesting, obviously a disruptor. They bought a company called PillPack, which is focused on mail delivery pharmacy. They do no same day delivery. They don't have their own technology, PillPack. They have this thing they called Pharmacy OS. It was really just an app for the consumer. They were using off the shelf pharmacy software as well. Good for them. I mean, they had a good exit. Hats off to the team. We'll see what Amazon does with it. It seems pretty clear Amazon's focused first on the mail delivery side. To do what we do, you have to have micro-fulfillment centers that are close to the customer. In pharmacy, there's a bunch of regulations. I could bore you to tears, but you know, the inventory itself has to be on the premises where the pharmacist is, and the prescription that is going to the patient has to be proven that it came from that inventory and that location, and that pharmacist signed off on it. So it presents a much different logistics challenge and business model than what you would see in an Amazon type of model, where they can have a central warehouse. They can move product from one warehouse to another. You can't do that in pharmacy. It's not permitted. So they're going to do 2-day delivery of prescriptions, most likely. I think that's going to put an awful lot of pressure on the mail delivery pharmacy companies, like our names you haven't really probably heard of, unless you're taking mail prescriptions, but companies like Express Scripts and Caremark and NRX. These are, you know, companies doing $50 billion a year in mail delivery pharmacy. They're doing about 7 or 8 or 10-day delivery. Amazon's going to come up with 2-day delivery. They're going to be hurt first. They're going to look for another solution. They're going to need to find a way to get closer to the customer. We'll see. I think there'll be interesting possibilities for strategic partners. At some point, Amazon's going to figure out that they want to go to same-day delivery. I think it's possible. If they do, again, that's going to put more pressure on CVS and Walgreens, more than it'll put pressure on me. And again, I think there will be some interesting strategic partnership opportunities down the line. If none of that happens quickly, you know, then we have a great path forward. It's a massive industry. We can get huge swaths of revenue and market share, and I think we'll have a great IPO possibility for us, assuming the IPO environment is favorable in the next few years. I think we're gonna, you know, that's sort of the plan A, is get out there and go to IPO. If that, you know, if other things change on the ground and things move faster, I think strategic acquisition is certainly a possibility.
Excellent. And just want to let everyone know, feel free to enter questions into the Q&A section. One more question for you here. What are you hearing from customers? And you know, if you could say both good and bad about the experience of utilizing NowRx over traditional pharmacy or CareScripts or one of those mail delivery services.
You know, I tend not to like when companies crow too much about their Yelp reviews, because Yelp reviews can be kind of astroturfed and things like that. But I got to say, our Yelp reviews are amazing. I mean, people call us lifesavers, game changers. You know, customers love our service. We get tremendously positive ratings back. We've surveyed customers as well. 70% want to recommend us to a friend or family member. It's a terrible industry. The status quo is a horrible experience. I think I know why. I think those companies, the CVS's and Walgreens of the world, want customers in their store, and all the millennials and everyone else is going the other direction towards free same-day delivery, and the big guys don't want to provide that. And so there's a huge gap, this huge misalignment of incentives, and patients are just thrilled to have an opportunity. And I think once they get free same-day delivery, they're never going to go back.
Yeah.
Our retention is phenomenal. There's really no churn. I mean, we have patients that die or move out of the area, but there's essentially zero churn. I mean, it's just too good of an experience. We work very hard on that. Again, the technology that we focused on is all around efficiency, sure, but customer experience. Like that's what's going to win the day. We're going to build the brand that's known for the best customer experience in the industry. It's not just about delivery, it's about a better pharmacy all across the board, the entire experience. And that's been proven out in our customer responses.
Awesome. So a couple questions that I've gotten from the crowd. First one, why is NowRx pursuing its capital raise via crowdfunding instead of traditional VC? And will you take the same approach for your Series C?
So we have continued to pursue both paths. We're in Silicon Valley and Mountain View. We've continued to approach VCs. I'm talking to VCs right now. For our Series A, we got really great terms in crowdfunding. We had a $20 million pre-money valuation. Crowdfunding has some advantages for entrepreneurs. We got really clean terms. I didn't have to give up a board seat. There was no revesting of stock. There were no ratchets. There's no liquidity preferences. I think crowdfunding is an exciting alternative for entrepreneurs. Was very successful for us. And we looked at both paths again for our Series B, the current round. I think we're raising a little bit more money this year. We're going to raise $20 million. We have a $65 million pre-money valuation. I expect we'll raise 5 to 10 million on crowdfunding, and we'll raise another 10 to 15 from institutional investors. That could change. We'll see how the round progresses. But that's kind of my general expectations with this round. For our next round, it's going to most likely be straight institutional. For our Series C, we're going to be looking at a $100 million round to really take the company nationwide. Once I prove scalability throughout the West Coast and profitability in some of our markets that we serve, the more mature markets, it's just going to be about turning the crank and taking this nationwide. And so we'll be looking at a growth equity fund. Private equity companies have been starting to ping us. So there'll be a few opportunities, I think, this time next year.
Excellent. Another question here from the crowd. Has NowRx considered either licensing their dispensing technology to or becoming the dispensing backend for the legacy players?
We've looked at that, and that question comes up from time to time. There's one player out there trying that approach. They're called TruePill. I look at the pharmacy industry, though, and kind of get turned off by that idea. There's a huge consolidation at the very upper end, right? You have Walgreens and CVS and Rite Aid. You could try to sell to those guys, but let's face it, that's a long sales cycle. I don't know if you're going to win that sale or not. The rest of the market is at the completely other end of the spectrum. A lot of mom and pop pharmacies owned by, usually owner operated by a pharmacist. There's about 20,000 across the U.S. These are low margin guys. If you're going to license any kind of product or platform, that's really who you're going to sell to. I don't think there's a lot of margin. So if you figure maybe you sell your software for $100 a seat, maybe there's 2 or 3 seats. You're talking about maybe a few $1,000. Let's call $3,000 a year average across 10,000 pharmacies. You're not going to write them all. Even if you got 10,000 of them, that's a 30 million a year business. It's interesting, but we're going after something quite a bit bigger.
Excellent. And one more question here from the crowd. Autonomous vehicle technology. Do you think about that? How does that fit into your overall strategy as a company?
Yeah, I think autonomous vehicles, I usually get the question about drones. I actually think drones, if you look carefully at what the FAA has been saying, drone technology is actually, I think, quite a ways off, just my personal opinion. You can't have drones flying through neighborhoods where moms are, pushing babies in strollers and falling down on the babies' heads and things. I think that's a ways away. Autonomous vehicles, I think, will be here sooner than drones. And we've talked to a few providers. We're certainly watching that space closely. Our view is, once that becomes commercially viable, there will be enough opportunities and options for us to choose from to deploy that in our own service. We don't feel like we need to develop that ourselves. It seems like enough companies are chasing that. There's some other interesting things like delivery robots in urban areas that kind of go around the sidewalk that we're doing some research in, I'll say. But the autonomous vehicles, love to have it. I think it'll be great. I just read, not too long ago, Domino's Pizza was doing some deliveries with autonomous vehicles. You've got to do a little bit extra thing to actually let the customer, get their medications or their package out. But yeah, that's coming. We're excited by it. Obviously, anything that can reduce the margins would be great.
Excellent. And last question I have from the crowd here is, how do you manage from an insurance standpoint, things going wrong, people getting the wrong pills? The robot's probably not going to be 100%. Hopefully it's 99.9%, but there's always going to be issues. So what's your liability on that front?
Yeah, there is a pharmacy liability for any pharmacy. We carry the same type of insurance that any pharmacy carries. It's a professional liability cover specifically for pharmacies and pharmacists. We've delivered 100 prescriptions without incident. We have an extremely high success rate, very low incident rate, obviously. So not too worried about it. We're covered up to $4 million per facility. It's part of the business. We're very careful about it. We work with the DEA on narcotics. We work with the State Board of Pharmacy in our operations where we function, in the areas where we operate. And, it's something we watch fairly carefully. My background's actually insurance, so we're pretty well protected there.
Nice. And you said you've delivered 100 prescriptions. Did you mean like 100,000?
Did I say 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very exciting. Sorry. We delivered 100,000 prescriptions since inception without incident.
Excellent. Very
Much more
cool.
than 100. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
It's 9 a.m. here on the West Coast.
And last question for you here today, as you think about this business 3-5 years down the road, where do you see it? What is success for you?
Several $100 million in revenue, pushing $1 billion in 20 different markets. I think that is the play here for NowRx, and and I just think pharmacy in general. It's such a large market. There's such an opportunity for disruption. It's go big or go home. This is a very exciting time to be in pharmacy. You've got Amazon coming in. You got some startups that are raising some large rounds. It's clear what customers want. It's clear in my mind what the big guys aren't willing to provide. This is what you want as an entrepreneur, and we're going after it.
Excellent. And for everyone listening, so when I think about the business and when we at Kingscrowd think about every business that we look at 5 key components for these early stage companies. And it's really around market size, which you have a massive, incredibly large market to go after. We like to look at the terms of the deal. At the end of the day, in relation to capsule and in relation to where you're at today, it's actually reasonable and within reason. Business model, that's probably your one knock, is that it is a low margin business, but you found efficiencies to create profits and find a way to make this a long-term sustainable business, especially at scale. Founder experience, you've been there, you've done that, you have great people around you, and you've shown an ability to have success thus far. And then product or service differentiators. At the end of the day, same day delivery for pharmaceuticals right to your door is better than anything else you're really going to experience out there. So when we think about the opportunity, That's why we get excited. It's because they're dinging on every one of these things in a really positive way. And that does not always happen or even come close to happening. So that's why we get excited about it. No guarantees in this world. Anything can happen. But really bullish on the opportunity. Love what you guys are doing. Think you've made an incredible amount of progress and are really looking forward to kind of watching how things go moving forward here.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm sure I couldn't have said it better. There's also a forum on our profile page at SeedInvest.com, and I'm on there regularly. Any other questions? I love the interaction and the conversation. So come on over and ask some more questions and take a look at the opportunity. We'd love to have you on board.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Cary. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you everyone for joining today. Take care.
Thank you.